Hello, everybody. We have reached the end of the road for now. X-Men Apocalypse, the most recent film in the X-Men franchise. Therefore, kind of the last podcast in terms of reviewing. And we've been with you from the start. We're here. We're still here now. I'm Matt Waters. I am joined, as always, by Mike Thomas. Mike, what is up?
I'm doing well. It's not really a retrospective podcast anymore. It's like a slightly delayed podcast. It's like a 3 months delayed podcast.
Yeah, kind of. Here's our hot take on a movie that kind of just came out. And
and it's not quite out on DVD yet.
No, but we just have the best memories, so
yes,
we can tackle this anyway. Suspicious mutant memories.
Yeah, suspiciously strong memories, but it's okay. We embrace the apocalypse, making our cognitive skills all the stronger for this movie. It works. Just trust us.
His eyes turned white, our memories got stronger. You can't explain that. That's just movie magic. So Apocalypse is kind of the big bad in the X-Men world. And Bryan Singer finally took a crack at adapting him into live action. It was something that was thought to be not all that possible, given he is this larger-than-life, enormous character that has a very weird look, and we'll get into how successful he was. But before we do that, Mike, it is your specialty. What has been going on in the world of superhero movies?
So we're now officially in 2016, and everyone's tired of superhero movies. And so much so that they convinced themselves that a fairly by-the-book story like Deadpool was like this big breaking of tradition or something. I don't know what people would be so naive to think that, but it's happening. Everyone's just sick of them, honestly. That's the only way I can describe it. They're just like flat out sick of them. And their standards for them seem to be never been higher. That's probably a good thing overall, because you don't as we've seen, it's very easy to phone these superhero movies in. There's a very clear formula for how to do it, and then we get a bunch of underwhelming movies that always do well. And X-Men, the legacy of X-Men Apocalypse might be the signaling that people are like, okay, good enough is no longer good enough, and we're going to prove that to you with our wallets. And X-Men and with our reviews, because X-Men Apocalypse is the second worst reviewed X-Men movie ever. I mean, if you go by Rotten Tomatoes, it was incredibly unsuccessful financially, given that they're coming off their two most financially successful movies in the franchise or the universe, and it kind of leaves this movie. The legacy of this movie is probably not going to be all that much. It's probably going to be. And I remember seeing people like friends who were pinning my respect saying, maybe it's time to stick a fork in the X-Men franchise. Like, maybe we just don't need to keep making X-Men movies anymore. And that was kind of like anything. That made me want to do a project like this, because I'm just like, everyone, let's calm the fuck down here. This isn't fucking Thor 2. This isn't Iron Man 3. Like, this is a solid movie that contributes to its franchise in a meaningful way, and is also as entertaining as fuck from beginning to end. So it comes in a very weird time for comic book based movies, and it's probably the impact at this time was minimal at best, and I don't think it's going to have much of a legacy as a result.
Every time you throw shade at Iron Man 3, a friend of mine gets really angry and sends me a text message, so thank you for that.
I got breaking news. Your friend's a candy ass. He's the Iceman of your friends.
Thank you. So...
Also, I'm working on the poster right now for this movie, and I'm really excited for that.
Good. Spoilers. You're lifting the curtain on how this magic happens. So you mentioned it wasn't all that financially successful. The budget was $178 million, which is a lot more than the 57 or something that I think I said Deadpool got. And yeah, I mean, if we're going by that rule of at least double the marketing, double the budget to get marketing included, then yeah, it really didn't make a whole lot of money, because I believe the worldwide gross is 540 million-ish, so only just over double. So yeah,
I think there's this weird thing where Marvel like owns the merchandising rights, and they're not doing merchandise for X-Men as like some like fuck you to Fox or something. So, like, there's not if the X-Men movies aren't huge hits, there's not going to be a lot of motivation to make them. You can't make your money back in other ways, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. Every Marvel project that comes out, it's supported by this enormous wave in the comics themselves, in the merchandise. There's T-shirts, you name it, it's there. And you know, X-Men can't do that. Like, Marvel literally wrote the Fantastic Four out of existence, pretty much, in their comics, so that Fox couldn't really get much support for it with movies. They can't do it with X-Men because it's so incredibly popular, but I'm sure they have considered it.
Yeah, and I mean that sucks. That's the cost of doing business, I guess. But I think it's awfully short-sighted and a very cynical move on Fox's part to just be like, "Fuck off! If we can't make all the money from this, we're not making any money from this."
Yeah. Well, I mean, you and I will continue to yell from the rooftops that they don't need to give this back to Marvel, but unfortunately,
anyone who says that, I think, really just... I don't know. I should probably not yell at the people who are... the 5 people listening to this, because I'm assuming maybe on odds half of them are. But
well, one of them already hates you and tells me all the time how wrong you are, so, and you're just making it worse this time. So
that's great. Also great for you, considering the only thing we disagree on is Deadpool. So
pretty much.
Too. And it's only on degrees of how much we like it.
Yes. Well, I like Iron Man 3 more than you, but that doesn't matter.
Let's do a sidebar right now.
Okay.
The movie's trash. I will defend Iron Man 2 until the end of time for being a completely competent, average superhero movie. And I'll say Iron Man 3 tries to be more than that and fails, and that is, the price of going for a home run and coming up short.
I'll defend Sam Rockwell until my dying day, but the film's not good, man.
Yeah, it's an Iron Man movie. Of course it's not.
Okay, fine. 3 is the best one, though. So, on we go.
3 is the most ambitious. 3 is the most ambitious. I'll say that.
On we go with X-Men Apocalypse. Bryan Singer is back. He is just racking up X-Men directorial credits. My favourite writer in the whole universe, Simon Kinberg, is back. I will say, I appreciate his sort of... His expertise of X-Men flows through. Like, you get a real sense he knows the characters. I just don't like the sort of creative direction he takes things. But I appreciate all the details he puts into things, so...
Yeah, I mean, you know way more about him and have way stronger feelings about him in general, so I'll just leave the Simon Kinberg comments to you.
He's always the one that is giving the interviews when it comes to, like, oh, this is what we're going to do with Fantastic Four, and this is what we're going to do with this, and he's the closest they have to a Joss Whedon-esque, not Joss Whedon, Kevin Feige figure. So he's the person I have to pin my blames on whenever they do something bad. Probably not his fault.
Yeah. Like, he's worked on good X-Men movies and he's worked on bad X-Men movies. He's the constant, so...
He is. More so than Bryan Singer, almost.
Yeah. I mean, definitely more so.
So, it's Apocalypse. Apocalypse is basically one of the oldest mutants there is, if not the first one. He rose to power in ancient Egypt. He can transfer himself into different bodies to stay young and to get new powers, which is Mike's favourite plot device. So he gets buried under a pyramid after some people try to assassinate him. Sleepy time for many hundreds, if not thousands of years. He's awoken in the present day, standard, affair. And he recruits new followers in Storm, Psylocke, Angel, and our old friend Magneto. makes a plan to conquer the world. He wants to use Charles Xavier's telepathic abilities to connect to everyone and, be everywhere, be worshipped, kill the people he thinks aren't worthy, blah, 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 blah. So Mystique, of all people, bands together with Moira McTaggart and a young group of X-Men, and they just go and stop him, basically, ultimately thanks to Jean Grey unleashing the power of the Phoenix. And when we leave the movie, we have Xavier and Mystique training our new young team of X-Men, and in a post-credit scene, some creepy dudes in suits collect some of Wolverine's DNA, spoilers of Wolverine's in the movie, on behalf of Nathaniel Essex, which is the name of Mr. Sinister, who you would be forgiven for not knowing who the hell that is, but if you watch the animated series, you know who Mr. Sinister is.
Yeah, all that happened. I can verify.
All of that happened.
You'll have to go into details later about that extra scene, because I watched it twice, and I was just like, I have no fucking idea what that means. And then walked out of the theater.
We'll get into it.
Now, I will say 100%, this is by far the weakest of the First Class trilogy. We definitely agree there, right?
Yes.
The weakest X-Men movie directed by Bryan Singer.
Yes.
Pretty clearly.
Yeah.
It is also the weakest movie of all the X-Men movies that I enjoy and like and think is good.
Yep. Still with you.
That leads to a lot of conflicted feelings for me, because I want people to like and respect this movie more, but there are clear and obvious issues with it that hold it down. That need to absolutely be acknowledged before we even move on to things that were good about it. I mean, I think the two main issues is that what the runtime of this movie is 1 hour and 44 minutes, which they jam a lot into that. But doesn't it feel like there's 30 minutes of material left on the cutting room floor that would significantly contribute to the movie?
It did feel quite rushed in a lot of spots.
It seems like every single character is shortchanged one way or the other. I don't think anyone, maybe Quicksilver and Moira McTaggart got the amount of screen time they needed to be fully realized characters, but that's only based on the fact we've already seen them before.
Yes.
Everyone else felt like, oh, that person's there. I recognize that person. He or she is doing things, and that's it.
I think the Horsemen in particular needed more time, and I think it goes into what we were saying about Days of Future Past, where I made the point, this is an enormous cast, how have they managed to get everyone, blah, 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 and you made the great point that they disguise it by, there's a big ensemble who are used in shortly at the beginning, and that's bookended by the main four. This is actually... I mean, it's a smaller cast in terms of actual character for character, but there's more people currently on screen at any given time, so it's a little bit more of a mess there.
There's 15 characters who need some sort of arc in this movie, which you just can't do unless you're making Lord of the fucking Rings. I don't know why I'm dropping F-bombs so much in this podcast, but...
Fuck it, it's the last one. Fuck it.
It's a bit trashy. Anyway, there's literally every single... There's so many characters in this movie, and they can get away with it because there's not a lot of new characters here. I think Psylocke and Apocalypse are the only two new characters, as best as I can tell. So it's easy to take shortcuts when these characters actually exist or they're recognizable, but that doesn't make your movie quite hit us home quite as much as it should. And I think that's something we've talked about either off quote-unquote camera or on camera, which is that there's no real center to this movie, where Magneto's journey was the center of First Class, Charles' journey was the center of Days of Future Past, Wolverine's journey was the center of the first two X-Men movies, and this movie is desperately missing its center to hold it all together. Who's the character that was going on this journey from beginning to end that we could be deeply, deeply invested in, and thus care a great amount and want to see it come to a proper conclusion. And I think if it had that, it wouldn't be quite the big deal that all these other characters get shortchanged. Because, I mean, X-Men, just by the nature of the fact that it's an ensemble universe, is always going to shortchange its characters. I mean, we've had 3 or 4 movies that we've talked about how much we love them, but they have nothing but short-changed characters all over the place. And I think the key here is that there's no center. The closest thing to the center is Mystique, right?
I think that's what they were going for. I think they were going for, First Class is Magneto's movie, Days of Future Past is Xavier's, this is Mystique, stepping up and being a freedom fighter and a hero, and it's like, that. I think that is when I think of this film, when I think of the trailers leading up to it, when I think of all the sort of word of mouth about it, when I think of watching it, the thing I can't shake is Mystique is the biggest hero in the world ever, guys, because J-Law. And no.
Yeah. And also, that's important. I mean, the other big weakness is, I think, is Apocalypse, but we'll get to that later. So the premise that this is this whole story is based on is that the world changed dramatically because Wolverine went back in time to prevent Mystique from killing Trask. And that put Mystique on a far different journey in life, and that put the world on a far different journey. And the idea was that by Mystique saving the president and Trask, the world, kind of polite society kind of opened its arms to mutants in public. So it's kind of actually, I think, a rather clever metaphor, not metaphor, but rather clever evolution of the oppression metaphor that X-Men is about, because we see that all the time, especially right now. It's everyone will be polite when it comes to oppressed members of society, but the institutions will still hold them down. Deep down, there's prejudice everywhere. It's rampant. So I thought that aspect of it was clever. It's still just nearly impossible to believe, though, that after Magneto did what he did, that that mutants would be allowed and to exist at this point. Like, he lifted up a baseball stadium and surrounded the White House and proved that nothing they could do would stop him. That's a very hard leap to make, and I think another that kind of leads to another big weakness is that of the first Clash trilogy, this really feels like the first one where we don't get a glimpse into how the public, or at least the government, is reacting to everything going on. We get very, very brief glances into that aspect of the world, and I think that was desperately missing. I think we don't see the government's perspective on this. Like, what would their reaction to all this be? And I guess they just kind of wrote them off as like they're kind of helpless in the situation, but I don't think that's good enough.
No, I think that was, as you said, that's always been a strength of these films, is it feels like a real lived-in world. Like, you see a realistic socio-political climate, and in this one it's just, the closest they really get is Mystique, I think it is, says something to the effect of, they still hate and fear us, they just more polite about it, or they hide it, or something.
And I think that's a clever thing to do, but we don't actually see it. Like, when I remember watching it in the theater and being like, wait, Nightcrawler's going to get a passport? What? Nightcrawler's going to the movie theater? Like, how is there no even just, like, casual reaction shot to the fact that there's a blue demon monkey walking around in 1983?
Yeah,
that seems like a big... That should, like, we got rid of slavery in the 1800s in this country, but the world's still pretty freaking racist, and it didn't stop being blatantly racist all over the place for a really long time. And it never really, I mean, not that it really has, but, the crazy, crazy amount of public racism did not stop in a wider way for a really long time.
Yeah, and when you're saying how there's half an hour of footage on the cutting room floor, possibly, I would say, we said how the Horsemen need more fleshing out. I think we needed to see more of the young kids hanging out, like when they go see movies and stuff. Like, even if it's a little bit cheesy and, like, they're in the theater and people are sort of like, looking over and pointing toward Nightcrawler and muttering under their breath. Even something as simple as that would have been nice to see, and just see these kids and how they mingle with the world. Because you've got Cyclops here, who is, sort of recently a mutant, and you can't tell by looking at him that he is one, and he's very much like, oh, I want to show you what America's like. That was a really good, like, chance to do something there with, like, mutants in society.
Yeah. And I'm surprised. I mean, with the whole First Class trilogy, they kind of put that whole in-your-face metaphor to the side, I'll say. So that's at least somewhat consistent. Like, you know, the first two movies didn't deal a whole lot with socio-political metaphors. It's much more the world is about to end, we have to save it kind of thing. And I think they got away with it with the first two, but the issues here, they needed it more in this one than the last two.
Yeah,
especially with the whole idea that mutants are out and about now. You know, one of the big advantages, they didn't have to deal with that quite as much because mutants were still in hiding officially. Like, the majority of the world did not seem to know that mutants existed in Days of Future Past or in First Class. And I think that is a huge world-altering change that can't just be written off with a couple lines.
Yeah. I think it also sort of contradicts their story of Mystique, because she's continuing to be disguised as often as possible. Like, I get that she uses her disguises to get in places, etc., but when she's around just sort of standard mutants, I think she should have been blue more. Like, when she's meeting with Caliban to get Nightcrawler a passport, they're all mutants, they all know who she is. Why is she still looking like Jennifer Lawrence? Like,
well, I think the idea there, although I think it was mostly just to get Jennifer Lawrence on the screen more. She says, I think she's more. She doesn't want to be the hero to mutants, let alone society. And the way she responds to the mutants' response to her in blue form, I think at least kind of sells that enough, even if it does seem silly.
No, I understand that, and I was going to ask this question about when she visits the school. When I saw it, I was like, why is she not blue? And then as it goes on a bit, and when she inadvertently changes back during the Quicksilver scene, and they all look on her as some sort of savior, and she doesn't want that put on her, then that made sense to me. But I think the Caliban scene, it's like, well, you should probably be blue here. Like, they know who you are. They've named you.
Yeah,
I get the real reason why she's Jennifer Lawrence more often than she's blue, but the within the story justifications are flimsy to me.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not. It's definitely not perfect. So I just more just needs to be done with that, and that. I mean, brings us to our main issue that we've talked about before, that Jennifer Lawrence just cannot carry this movie, wasn't even really asked to carry this movie, and that whatever her role needed to be, that needed to be the center of the movie. And I don't know, maybe they cut some of it up because it wasn't working, and they just opted to like ignore it, but it seemed like she was set up to be the center of the movie, and it just doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I mean... They've done. She's asked to be like, so she's kind of filling that Wolverine in X-Men 2 role, where the professor's been kidnapped, therefore you, unlikely hero, must step up. And I really don't buy it at all. Like, I hate the, your X-Men speech near the end, and
she delivers it so without any passion whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's not only does the role not really work, but like Jennifer Lawrence is flat out bad in this movie. Any of the spunk and passion from the First Class is gone. There's not really a badass like they at least attempted to make her in this last one. They didn't like minimize her screen time and maximize her meaning. Like, this was like the worst of both worlds, where she's in it a fair amount and she doesn't mean anything really to the movie. She doesn't really, and she also doesn't get to do anything all that important.
No, well, I guess we'll talk about it when we get to the good bits in terms of her, how she's seen, but in terms of what she actually does, like, why is she attempting to fight Apocalypse when she has no physical powers? Like, they set her up to be... it's like Wolverine, like... It's kind of like when Wolverine tries to take on Magneto, but not. Like, Wolverine is a legitimate, like, he can take anyone down, like, he heals, he's got the claws, like, you get why he would rush at a villain. And I get that Mystique is, like, highly trained, and we've seen plenty of evidence of her being a badass, but against someone of the like of Apocalypse, it's like, what are you gonna do, really?
Yeah, and I think, like, when she slit his throat with the sword, my reaction was, that's clearly it doesn't mean anything. Like, that's not gonna work. But I think that actually kind of gets to the issue, which is that Apocalypse powers are so not established, or the scope of what Apocalypse is capable of is just not established, that, was that supposed to mean something? Were we supposed to believe that? And I almost kind of think that they wanted us to.
Well, we knew that he could heal because we see him gain that power, but I guess they have no evidence that he can. So I suppose cutting his throat open would be a logical thing to try. But
and I will say that when I saw the movie the second time, that moment, like, that crystallized for me far more clearly the second time. So it was like, actually, when I watched the, and we'll get into it, like the prologue of them needlessly proving that Oscar Isaac's, ancient Egyptian character can heal himself, I was like, oh, that's why that was supposed to be like this big shocking moment. But I mean, I guess, like, Apocalypse in general always seems like so much of a god that, like, cutting his throat with a sword is just never going to kill him.
No, but this is their first exposure to him. Like, I don't know. The other big thing she's there for is to basically talk Magneto out of being a dick. To be, like, the person to talk him down in the way that Xavier did for her, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it isn't as powerful, it isn't as touching, it's just sort of...
No.
It just comes across a bit hammy. Like, she's just like, oh, please don't do it.
Yeah. And that really, like, compare that to in the exact same scene, the moments with Quicksilver were so much more meaningful.
Yeah.
And, so that transitions to Apocalypse, or was supposed to transition to Apocalypse. Apocalypse is not a character. He's like this idea. Like, he, in a lot of the same ways that the Joker is not really a character in The Dark Knight. Like, he's just kind of like this force of nature that everyone has to react and respond to. And, this is not Heath Ledger's portrayal of Joker. This is just not, and there's not enough time or memorable moments devoted to him to make it really feel like anything important, significant, or powerful in any way. Like, this is not a jump off the screen performance for Oscar Isaac, and I don't know if it was written enough to be that way. I don't know what that could have been done to fix that, but everything about the way Apocalypse was portrayed and shown here makes me think Apocalypse probably is not all that great of a villain.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to introduce him and build him up to be what he is, and then have him, and then fight him, and then defeat him in the span of one film. I wouldn't say they should go the Marvel route where, like, you see Thanos at the end of Avengers 1, and then you just see a second of him here and there, and, like, he's looming in the background, because that hasn't actually been all that effective either. But something to that ilk, where maybe we see a bit of him in a couple of films, might have helped. But it's very difficult. He just seems like the most generic throwaway superhero villain, where it's like, he's the biggest, baddest thing ever, guys, trust us, and then they just beat him.
And if they were, I think, there's a couple things. Once again, Days of Future Past kind of, like, throws such a wrinkle in the traditional trilogy arc that this wouldn't really be possible, or, in much the same way that Moira really didn't have a role in the second, like, couldn't have a role in the second one. It'd be really awkward if Apocalypse was in Days of Future Past. Now, it'd be really believable if he was kind of like the guy with a hand on the shoulder of Sebastian Shaw, and Apocalypse was using him for his own means, but, then that kind of takes away some of the juice from Sebastian Shaw. Like,
They could have maybe showed him in the future parts of Days of Future Past.
Yeah,
because he is kind of ageless, immortal, always around. But
Yeah.
it would have been hard to do. I honestly don't know what the answer is. I think he is better suited to serial stuff like comic books and cartoons. I think he is hard to do in a film. Least of all because it's so hard to do that look. Because he's meant to be this just sort of like 9 foot tall, alien looking motherfucker with like a changing body and all this. And like Oscar Isaac's a man. Like.
Yeah,
I remember the first reveal of him. People were just
the magazine. It really it legitimately did look like the Power Rangers guy.
Yeah, Ivan
like,
Ooze.
Yeah, and I think that was a totally valid criticism.
It looks slightly better in motion,
yes.
but that was an
awful
picture to reveal him with. And like, hats off to Oscar Isaac to committing to this, because some of what he has to say and do, and what he's wearing while he's doing it, is utterly ridiculous. But he seems to be, giving it all he is capable of in the setting.
Yeah, and like he's fine. He gets the job done. The job just doesn't have a lot going on.
No, I am a big sucker for a Machiavellian speech, and his whole thing of like you can fire arrows from the Tower of Babel, but you will never touch God.
You can't strike God.
Yeah, like I hear something like that, and I love that kind of thing. But yeah, he also says a lot of hammy stuff, and yeah, it's a very difficult villain. And you've also got the problem that he's then surrounded by 4 other villains who are also not getting enough time.
Yeah.
Well, one of them we know, so you didn't need to do much for Magneto, but certainly for Psylocke, Storm, and Angel, they needed more time.
Yeah, and again, like I think the thing to do, like they always Kevin Feige always mentions like the Emperor when it comes to Thanos, like he's the guy lurking behind the scenes. But you know what? The Emperor was cool and all, but you got Darth Vader roaming around for 3 movies that whole time, and he has his own whole arc, and that's if you want to do the Emperor type villain, like which Thanos basically is, like Thanos and Apocalypse are just literally evil incarnate. Like there's no subtlety to them. It's just depending on the writing and the dialogue and getting a good actor. And the only thing that only works because you have Vader. And there's no Vader in the MCU, and Apocalypse. There was no time. You couldn't do a proper Vader arc in one movie when you got 50 other characters. So I think this is a major issue with the movie. I think, and I actually like it more the more I rewatch the movie. Like it's easy, like it doesn't bother me quite as much. But when I first watched the movie, it was a pretty major issue for me that this villain falls flat for the most part, and it doesn't feel like that big epic end of the video game villain that it needed to be.
I think a big problem this had was, Deadpool isn't really competition for it, but it came out after Deadpool. But more importantly, it came out, I don't know, a couple of weeks after Civil War, and maybe a couple of weeks before Batman v Superman. So you got 3...
No, Batman v Superman was February. It was closer to Deadpool.
Really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, they all came out, reasonably near each other.
Maybe March, but yeah.
So you got 3 quite large-scale movies. Civil War is the biggest movie that Marvel's done. Like, the most characters so far. Big fight, blah, blah, blah. Batman v Superman, that's literally the 2 most famous comic book characters ever fighting on screen for the first time. That's a big claim. X-Men are trying to do Apocalypse, the biggest villain in X-Men history. Magneto's the most famous one, but Apocalypse is like the big bad in their universe. So you got all this happening at once, and I think superhero fatigue is a real thing, as you said at the beginning, and I think that hurt them quite a lot because it was the wrong time to have a slight misfire. Yeah, I really think they needed something more like First Class to happen here, and then do an Apocalypse style movie either next time or maybe even the time after that, like build more to it. Because Days of Future Past was quite big scale. I think they needed to do something more sort of character driven and smaller first. rather than going, okay, we did a small fun thing, we did a bigger thing, and now here's the biggest thing we can do. And it's like, I kind of am not all there for that.
Yeah. And, it's unfortunate. But, like, even, like, you know, this movie cost nearly $200 million, but do you see it much? Like, this doesn't feel like a $200 million movie.
Not really. Like, there's a lot of CG effects, but there were in Days of Future Past. You know, there's a big cast, but several of them are quite young, so they're probably not getting paid all that much.
Yeah, I mean, like, no one, there's no Wolverine getting $20-25 million in this movie. Like...
Yeah, I don't know what they pay Jennifer Lawrence for these, but...
I think this one was still under the original contract, so...
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's zero chance she signs on for this if she wasn't already under contract to do so.
Yeah, that's the thing going in.
And like, you see that in every single line reading. Like, it feels like she just has to be there. Yeah,
she doesn't seem to have much interest in doing it. People have very minimal sort of enthusiasm for her being there. Luckily, she plays a shapeshifter, so she's the easiest person to recast, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, just... Knowing all that they... I mean, I guess scripts are written and star power must be obeyed, but to make her the centre of a film that she clearly doesn't really give much of a fuck about, and there isn't much enthusiasm for her, is problematic.
Yeah. So I guess we should get to the rest of the stuff. I mean, this is a movie we enjoy, by the way. That we've done nothing but shit on it so far, pretty much.
Yeah, I think it needs to be said. Like, this isn't. We're not going to sit here and tell you this is an amazing movie.
No,
we both like it. Obviously,
it's a really fun, easy movie to watch too.
Yeah, I think we just have to acknowledge that. No, it's not amazing. However, the ratings it got, the word of mouth it got. No way deserved, I don't think. So let's try and justify that, I guess.
I think, you know, so a movie, I mean, because of the apocalypse plot, basically, I mean, like, it's basically like a mummy movie. I mean, this is probably closer to it's like a combination of First Class and The Mummy. There's a lot of notes here that really feel very similar to First Class. One, you have a total end-of-the-world villain. You know, you feel like it's the start. You feel like you're trying to build this new X-Men team. It just feels like those notes feel very. It almost feels like this is Bryan Singer's version of First Class. Like, this is how he would have done First Class, and I think Matthew Vaughn has a better sense of that. Clearly,
yeah.
Two, like, I look at the Mummy movies just as a way of being like, okay, I think those movies work. Like, if you want to say which one's better, it's hard to compare them because, like, our level of investment in X-Men's too extreme, honestly, to be rational about it. But the first two Mummy movies, I think, have more going for it in that they don't. It's not just about resurrecting the mummy. Like, they find ways of tying together the mummy's past with the present in a way that adds a ton of pathos to the actual story they're telling, and I think that's really missing here. Like, I did, like, that stupid... Like, I just, in 5 minutes, came up with some dumb fan fiction idea where, like, the Oscar Isaac's character has, like, some twin who has the exact same healing power, and she's still alive, and she's, like, doing something to, like, rally everyone, or whatever. Like, it's something dumb like that. Like, anything to just find a way to connect Apocalypse Origins with now to give it some sort of heart. And then also, you know, probably cut the cast in half.
Yeah.
These, like, I don't know if Cyclops, Jean, and Mike Crawler need to be in this movie. Like, it's like, I'm not saying like they do well in the movie. They all get their moments, but like, it feels like it unnecessarily crowds the movie for that moment at the end.
But if you take them out, you're looking at Mystique, Beast, Moira, Quicksilver.
I rather see them give more time to Quicksilver. I more like Beast is he in this movie?
Yeah.
Like he really does not get a lot to do.
No, I know. But
you know, like I'm saying, like I know he's actually in the movie, but I'm saying like he just progressively seems to be getting less and less to do in these movies in terms of actual arcs, and he kind of just seems there to be like read lines and shepherd everyone along.
Yeah, I feel at this point they should have maybe relegated him to like technical support almost. Like,
yeah, like he almost is like Forge in the Wolverine versus the X-Men movie, where he's just basically on the sidelines the whole time, like making sure they're all technically proficient.
Yeah, like he jumps at Apocalypse, much like he jumped at Magneto previously, but like, it's like, well, you're not going to do anything. Like, these people are firing energy every which way. What are you going to do?
Yeah, like it was like it was nice that he tried. He's there. He's doing stuff.
Yeah. Well, but, I guess what I'm saying is, if you don't have Cyclops, Nightcrawler, Jean Grey, who do you want the cast to be in this movie?
I think this movie works better if you make it much more about the Horsemen fighting that group of X-Men and actually diving into who these Horsemen are and Horsewomen. Horse people.
The better two are, in fact, the women.
Yeah. And then, like I said, I think you need to either create an original character that comes from Apocalypse Origins, or you have to find a way to get some pre-existing mutant character there that that's still about. It just doesn't. There needs to be some emotion, and then if you make it the Horsemen versus the X-Men, and then that character with Apocalypse, like I feel like there's just a whole lot more. I feel like that would work better, but I'm not a good writer. I'm not a good person, so
yeah. There's definitely stuff you can do with Apocalypse, because I mean, getting into like the origins of his character, he's one of the earliest mutants. He's abandoned by his true parents because he's ugly, literally, and then he's taken in by these sort of roaming nomad thief warrior people, and they encourage him this survival of the fittest thing. And he's growing up in ancient Egypt. He cavorts with slaves, and like he's thrown into a pit of snakes because they think he's so ugly, and then his powers activate. Like, there's so much you can do with this character where you could flash back and forward, but there's none of it. It's just he is evil for evil's sake. Like, we meet him at the height of his power almost. Like, he's literally worshipped as a pharaoh. He's brought in on the people's backs. When he's revived, he says how, other names for me are like Ra, Osiris, whatever, just names of famous deities. And like, I think,
did you notice the difference between the theatrical cut and the commercial version of that?
Didn't they?
Like they call him Allah and Krishna in the commercial for it, and they cut that out of the theatrical cut.
I think he might be called Allah in the British. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, they definitely pulled that back a bit. But yeah, I think they maybe could have done something with showing him when he didn't have power, and like he was very forcibly taught this survival of the fittest mentality, that he is uniquely capable of inflicting upon others. That's his whole pathos. He doesn't see mutants and humans, he just sees weak and strong. Like, if there's a mutant with a useless power and there's a human who's a badass, he prefers the human. Like, I think they could have done more with that. And Singer talked about it, but I didn't see a lot of it. It's just, I am a god. Rah, 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 rah. I think they could have gotten more into what makes him tick.
Yeah, and all those things involve cutting the cast in half, too.
Yeah. I'd personally have lost, like, I don't know, I wouldn't have had Moira and Beast in the final battle. I'd rather Magneto probably wasn't in this movie, to be honest. Like, he does some good stuff, but he's problematic.
I hate suggesting anything that removes Michael Fassbender from the movie, but he feels fairly tacked on.
Yeah, and I'm sick of watching him flip-flop. Like, I know that he isn't a straightforward villain, and that's why he's so popular, the whole Magneto was right thing, and that he has drifted back and forth over the years, but we've seen it, like, in 3 movies in a row where he's hero-villain. Like, I kind of feel we need to leave him bad for a while before we turn him good again. But they do it within this movie. Like, he starts out sympathetic. You get these touching scenes with his child, his wife. He saves a man's life. He tells the police. They come and they accidentally kill his wife and kid. He slaughters all the police. Like, it's all very well acted. And then he's evil again.
that scene where he goes, "Is this what I am?"
Oh no, that's awful. Like him falling to the floor and yelling at the sky is terrible. But like
like his wife has just died and he's yelling at God.
Yeah. And if you took Magneto out, you could have taken out all of that as well. That's 20 minutes or so you could have given to someone else's backstory.
Yeah, if you take Magneto out, then you don't have to worry about that. But I mean, without that, he really shouldn't be in the movie.
No, I'm saying you should take him out and take that out, and then just have a different horseman. Like,
I guess,
because like literally, he just he's doing this thing that seems like it's going to destroy the whole world. Mystique talks him down from it, and then he doesn't actually really contribute that much to helping beat Apocalypse. Like he
puts an X in the middle of the field.
I mean, he creates a big X. That is kind of a requisite for these movies, but. I mean, you could have made him up with others. Like in a comic, it would absolutely make sense for him. He flies in out of nowhere and helps them. Like he's watching the whole time, and he's like, "Well, I can't stand for this anymore."
Well,
but within this film,
I think when you have a long-running show or comic or some serialized programming, that works. But I always wonder. Like, I keep thinking that's going to happen in one of these comic book movies, and it's going to be so dumb when it happens.
Yeah.
It's going to be so dumb. Like, I remember at the end of Winter Soldier thinking, like, when's Iron Man showing up? Is it going to be this big surprise? I'm like, it's going to happen one of these times, and people are going to flip out. Like, there's going to be like,
it's what
there's going to be like revolts. There's going to be revolts.
It's what the trailers made it look like was going to happen with Spider-Man, with Civil War, but then that's not what happened. But yeah, I personally feel this would have been a better movie without Magneto, even... I get the whole thing, you've got him under contract, and if you have him, you should use him and whatever, but the way they wrote this movie, I think he is taking up time that could have been given to other people.
I think the issue is that with, they did a noble thing with the horse people, which is that they want to use actual characters that we were familiar with, but then they didn't do anything really with them. So you can't, if you split that difference, it kind of feels like we didn't get either. Like, we didn't get enough time with Apocalypse because we're spending all this time with the horse people, and the horse people didn't get nearly enough time. So what are we doing here?
I think Storm needed more time because Alexandra Shipp, everything she's doing is awesome. Like, great look, like
very charismatic,
better actress than Halle Berry,
and just like that, even just that moment at the end where she's in the danger room and the lightning starts and her eyes go white. I'm just like, whoa, you are a badass.
Yeah. And we got the Mohawk for the first time, and just the idea that she looks up to Mystique as this sort of inspirational figure, all of that's great, and they could have done more with that. And no one ever says her name, like either Aurora or Storm in this whole film.
Yeah. And there wasn't time. There was not time. And I think that, there's too much going on in this movie for all of it to sink in. And I think as a result, there are a lot of great moments in this movie. Like, almost everyone has a great moment in this movie. I think, the scene where Charles gives Moira her memories back, it just, hits me in the heart every single time. Like, those two sell that like it's nothing.
Yeah.
I
really enjoyed the use of the footage from First Class and stuff.
Yeah.
Like with Magneto as well, when he's thinking back.
And it felt like a genuine conclusion to that story. And I think Apocalypse was the absolute worst possible villain to tell the conclusion to that story. Like, this either needed to be a break, they don't decide, they're not going to conclude the First Class yet, and they're just instead going to tell this Apocalypse story and then conclude First Class, or they conclude First Class now and then tell an Apocalypse story. There wasn't time for both.
I think the latter would have been the better idea. I think they should have tried to conclude it. I think they should have maybe built up the kids a bit and then used those kids that we then care about more against Apocalypse and his horsemen in another movie. But they did what they did.
And they could have had in the background, the events with the White House, has led to all these cult followings. And you could just had a couple throwaway lines, and then the last scene is them digging up Apocalypse or something, and then there's your fourth movie.
Yeah. I'm stunned we haven't had anyone wearing a t-shirt that says Magneto was right yet.
Yeah. I feel like, I mean, we've only talked about the big stuff with this movie, but there's a ton of important, like, Evan Peters is back as Quicksilver. He's great.
Yep.
Like, shockingly good. Like, nails every scene. Really good. He is in some ways like the emotional heart of a ton of scenes, which I would not have expected.
Yeah. He's parlayed like a word of mouth, throwaway sort of jokey scene in Days of Future Past into becoming a major cast member. Like, he's on the main 5 now. And
and he needs to be.
I hope they're gonna, like, compensate him.
Yeah, it must be tempting to put him in the X-Force side of things, but I think X-Men desperately needs him.
Yeah, he's fun, and they need the X-Men to be fun again. They need less. They need less broody sort of reluctance to use powers, like greys and blues. They need more like vibrant, fun. Hey, look at me using my power for everyday stuff. You know.
Yeah. And let's see.
So you don't.
Ty Sheridan plays Cyclops. I think he does a pretty solid job. I think he might grow into a pretty fine Cyclops, right?
I mean, he's no James Marsden, but he's.
Few are.
It's true. It's true. He's better than the baby Psyche we saw in Origins.
Yes.
I
rest in peace, Tim.
It does seem like they're doing like a quite heavy-handed course correction on. Okay, so like when people think of Cyclops, a lot of people think he's this boring Boy Scout character, and they're all wrong. But I feel they're trying too hard to try and change people's mind about that. Like, he's a little bit too mouthy and rebellious here.
He's a bit too much of a dick.
A little bit. Like, I appreciate them doing it because he is a dramatically misunderstood character, but a little bit too much. But I do like him.
Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones plays Jean Grey.
That accent wanders.
Yeah, she does not seem comfortable in the accent. I think it's a really common thing with actors. Like, they just, they're far more comfortable in their original accent. I mean, I remember thinking Penelope Cruz was an awful actress until I started seeing her in movies where she speaks Spanish. And I was like, oh, she's great.
Yeah.
And it's like, it just took her a really long time to be comfortable speaking English on screen. And Sophie Turner is not comfortable with an American accent yet. I don't know why. Like, why can't she be British? I don't know.
Yeah, why not?
What's the big deal with letting her be British in this movie so she can give a better performance? I don't.
Exactly, yeah. Like, I think it's Modern Family or something that there was some sort of joke about, like, I'm really smart in Spanish, and it's like, people were saying how, you're literally reaching for words all the time instead of just engaging your brain, and, like, if she's concentrating hard on trying to put this accent up instead of just, some actors and actresses can just do it. They can just switch on an accent and just be that, but that's not in her wheelhouse, and like there's nothing wrong with that. I can't do it, so just let her be British.
I think she's fine other than that, though. I think she gets the
I mean, we've seen years of evidence that she can do damaged sort of teen with a lot of power.
Ease.
So I think she's good casting, and like I remember when it was announced, I think pretty much everyone was like, yeah, nice, good call.
And she probably did not live up to that, but she was fine.
No, I mean, she's here. And, like, the list of people that they wanted for this or were in contention is pretty crazy. Like,
I would have, Elle Fanning, I'm a pretty big fan of after Super 8, so I would have, I was disappointed when I read that she was considered in the not cast.
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes. Cody Smith McPhee plays Kurt Wagner, Nightcrawler.
How many times have you said that?
Never.
You've never done that? Okay, well, that's pretty good. Good.
The Munich Sickness, I was the incredible Nightcrawler.
I fell apart.
Yeah, it did fall apart there. Should let it alone. Anyway, he's really good. He gets a couple of good funny lines.
I like his Thriller jacket a lot.
Yeah, he doesn't... This is not the tortured Alan Cumming version of Kurt Wagner.
Which is good, because I think Nightcrawler is a little bit more of a fun... Like, he's the heart of the team in the comics a lot of the time. Like, he's this swashbuckling adventurer who, looks like this demon, literally looks like the devil, but he's like a ladies' man and all this. So.
And like with a lot of things with X-Men, I like that there's two different versions of it that we get to enjoy. Yep. And I think that a younger Nightcrawler would be more lighthearted than, despite the fact he's being kept in a cage by a crazy circus.
Yeah, they don't let him talk enough. I don't think. Like he could be doing more.
Yeah. We'll see where they go with him from here. Hopefully, he'll not quit. Coming. Alexander Shipp plays Storm, despite not being called Storm. She doesn't get a lot to do, but she kind of nails the moment at the end where she's disgusted that Mystique's being killed by Apocalypse. So good for her.
Everything she does is great. I think she just doesn't do enough of it. She's failed by the writing team, but she makes the most of what they give her.
Onwards and upwards. Olivia Munn plays Psylocke.
Yeah, baby.
Olivia Munn is not without talent. I don't think any of that talent was on screen here. This kind of felt like Jennifer Lawrence, where it's like there's a very specific way to write for Olivia Munn, and they made her as stilted and awkward and robotic as possible. She needs to go to the Deadpool universe and never come back.
Yeah, like Psylocke is such a character, such a good character to use. You can do so much with her because she's basically Jean Grey mixed with Wolverine, but with a better personality.
Yeah.
And
also, is it a plot hole that Apocalypse doesn't just use her to do all this?
Yes.
Why does he need Xavier?
I think Xavier's a stronger telepath, but yeah, I mean, if he can boost people's powers, just use her telepathy.
It seems like
does she actually use
it seems like an oversight.
I don't think that they established she's a telepath in this. She just uses energy weapons and stuff.
Not officially, but I mean, they certainly hint at it that she has some sort of power that allows her to find people.
Yeah,
I guess. Hopefully, this is not a copy of the Danielle Ramirez character from Last Stand. That'd be terrible. That power is so stupid.
Yeah, I think it's a good casting, and I think
she'll be fine once she's a Deadpool.
And she looks so good on the I don't know if you noticed, but she began to creep closer and closer to the front in all the posters, and she got more and more time in the trailers. I think maybe she tested well or something, and they were like, "Oh shit!"
I mean, she's undeniably pretty.
But I think not just that. I mean, obviously she's pretty, but the look of the character, she's basically got lightsabers.
Oh yeah, I mean her look is cool, and it looks like she's going to be able to do some fun things.
Yeah. I really hope
not in an X-Men movie.
I really hope, like you said, that they put her in an X-Force movie or use her better in an X-Men film. But yeah, I think she's kind of problematic in an X-Men film because she has so many powers. But if you use her in X-Force, she could be great.
And apparently she got this role after trying out for Vanessa role in Deadpool. So,
yeah.
Yay. We have a couple of returning performers from previous First Class trilogy movies. Josh Hellman's back to playing... Well, yeah, I teased you there. I was not going for the heart of this entire trilogy right away. Josh Hellman plays William Stryker. At this point, he should look less like Josh Hellman and more like Brian Cox, or more like...
No, but they changed the past, so now...
Yeah, so people age slower, I guess.
Yeah, he hasn't been shocked in however he was shocked.
Yeah,
He's there.
Whatever.
He's doing what he does.
He's there. He's fine. The heart of the First Class trilogy.
Testify.
Lucas Till returns as Alex Summers / Havoc.
What the hell is happening with his hair?
It's the 80s, man. They should have just given him a mullet, just gone all the way with it.
Yeah.
He doesn't get a lot to do, but I think it was good that we have some leftover from First Class. Someone who had basically a cameo in Days of Future Past. It made the universe feel more realized and not just... Yeah, and I think, I think he does well in the scenes where he has to read exposition. He and McAvoy have pretty decent chemistry, actually. And
I like the scenes where people are greeting him after not seeing him for a long time.
Yeah, it's let's make sure the audience knows exactly who the fuck this guy is. I remember watching the first half of this movie, and I was just I need to do a compilation of every time someone says someone's first and last name, because it happens. Alex Summers, Boy Matega, Hank McCoy,
roll call.
And I'm just let's make sure everyone knows that these characters know each other. And I think he does really well where he has to destroy the Cerebro, and then when he just kind of I think his character would have such an intense loyalty to Charles at this time that he totally would just chase after Apocalypse, having no sense of what that could potentially mean, and then die in the attempt.
But does he die?
Yes.
But does he die?
Yes.
But does he die?
Yes. And I think, I actually think he does a pretty decent job there, so good for him.
Yeah, but does he die?
The issues I have with him, his death made 30 seconds of impact on his brother, who never makes any attempt to tell his parents, who just decides, I'm going to be a hero right now, right? Instead of actually, grieving for your brother dying, letting, your family know that he's dead. They couldn't even throw in a 5-second clip of him staring at a tombstone with his parents late in the movie because they didn't want any sadness in the final 5 minutes of the movie for whatever reason. Another thing with Magneto, Magneto's just not grieving anymore. And then on top of that, I think this, when Quicksilver shows up and does the really fantastic, slow motion save of everybody when Alex accidentally blows up the mansion, that comical note, I remember watching the movie for the first time being like, what about Havoc? What about Havoc? What about Havoc? Throughout the entire scene with Quicksilver. And it just felt like the wrong time for a comic relief action scene. And it really undercut what should have been, one of the original X-Men dying. Should be a moment, at least. And it wasn't.
Yeah, it's probably because he's not dead. Yeah, it's a really, really good scene. It's funny. I love it. I feel very sorry that Evan Peters spent 3 months filming that one scene. But it's great. But like you said, it is jarring to have it, offset a character death. Maybe Apocalypse should have just blown up the mansion and everyone should have survived. But
maybe you could have used this stuff later in the movie. But it just, like I said, a lot of this felt like, Bryan Singer has made has drawn his line in the sand about what things of First Class he wants and what things he does not want, and all the kids besides Hank are things he does not want.
These are not my actors.
Yeah, these are not my actors. These are not my characters, and it's probably if it wasn't for the fact that his character was related to Cyclops, he probably would have been killed off screen before Days of Future Past. It seems pretty clear to me now, at least anyway. Ben Hardy technically is acting in this movie as Angel.
Yes.
I don't think anything else really needs to be said because they don't really do anything with it.
Yeah, this is
a big thing, and they make it's just not a thing at all.
Yeah, he was shoehorned in Last Stand. It was he doesn't, they tease him having some kind of big thing, but he's kind of just there to be Angel, and it's here it is again. It's oh guys, Angel's here, but it's he doesn't do anything. And I know why he's in there. You can't not have him in there if you're doing an Apocalypse story, because he is the most famous Horseman. They turned Angel into Archangel. He's fated to become Apocalypse. This dark, twisted side. It's all really good stuff, but they do nothing with that.
I think it gets the idea that maybe this movie really should have been the tease for Apocalypse, and then maybe in the next movie or the movie after that you do it, because this is just rushed. I mean, I don't think there's any way he's dead at the end of this movie, but I don't see any reason for him not to be dead.
Yeah, they should have got a better actor if they wanted to. Maybe they don't want to do it. Maybe they don't want to lean into, he's Archangel now, and he's our friend, but he's also got this dark side. But you need a much better actor if you're going to do that. So maybe they're just not going to do it. But yeah, maybe it would have worked better if maybe Apocalypse, he had his Horsemen, but he's not actually doing anything in this movie, and the Horsemen are acting on his behalf, and then he's in the next movie. But who knows?
Let's see. Lana Condor is her 5th Jubilee, who's inexplicably 20 years younger than the previously established Jubilee. Whatever.
Still doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
We have yet to see it. I believe this is right. I don't think we've seen a single representation of her powers.
No, we have not.
There's a deleted scene with her, but I think she maybe uses some sort of electricity, but I can't be sure. But not in this one. In like X-Men 2.
Yeah, in the second one, right? Yeah.
But it's remarkable. Like they keep throwing her in there because I guess she's,
she's only established by the animated series. It's crazy how much nostalgia for the animated series seems to drive some of the writing of these movies, and some of the choices they make.
Yeah, like she's filling,
which makes sense because obviously we're the target audience for that, but it's so weird.
Yeah, like they literally just throw a yellow jacket on an Asian actress in every movie, and there's Jubilee. Yeah, but then there's nothing with it.
Finally, in what is reportedly his second to last portrayal of Wolverine, which seems incredibly unlikely, but whatever. Hugh Jackman gets a pretty awesome cameo as Wolverine.
They really couldn't hold off on putting him in the final trailer that came out 2 weeks before the movie.
I have no idea what they were thinking with that, but like I said, I think that was a result of the movie not testing well, and they wanted some excitement, or the trailers weren't testing well, or some numbers were telling them they were panicked about box office, so they decided to make it seem like Hugh Jackman actually had a role in this movie. It's really good. I like the idea of Jean helping him find the name Logan. In that scene, it kind of makes it feel like, oh, it's not just completely random that Wolverine is obsessed with her. There's some weird internal drive towards her that makes at least a little bit more sense and a little bit less gross.
Sowing the seed of his creepiness.
Yeah.
Because, she's literally like a teenager here, and he's...
I know. Yeah. And I think we'll get into my theory in the next movie, but he clearly should die at the end of Days of Future Past. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's a really well done cameo. He just kills a bunch of people. There's lots of blood.
One of them is Bryan Singer, I believe.
Yes, that is what the Wikipedia page I'm looking at is telling me as well.
Dude, the curtain.
I know.
We're professionals. We just know these things.
I think that's it in terms of the cast.
Caliban is there, but he's just a plot
device.
I thought
Caliban and the Fight Club circus band leader, whatever guy, those guys feel like characters from a completely different version of X-Men. That it just feels like a completely different version of X-Men. I don't know why. They're just too cartoonish for my taste.
I guess, yeah.
Blob is there really
briefly.
Blob is there.
Gets KO'd by Angel somehow.
Yeah. I don't also really buy Angel as this kick-ass fighter. I don't know why we're supposed to just automatically believe that.
Nope, he's just fighting dudes in Germany and listening to Metallica.
Yeah, it's bad.
I really don't know why Apocalypse would want him. I get why Storm is attractive. I get why Magneto, not like that, appealing to his goals. I get why Magneto is there. I get why Psylocke is there. Angel can fly. It's is there really no one that is more useful to you? You were just in a school. Well, they don't go there yet, but they go to a school full of people with powers. And they were, Psylocke has connections to all these other mutants, and she chooses Angel. I guess they're hinting at the relationship between Psylocke and Angel there, but I don't get why Apocalypse would be a dude that could fly would be useful when I can teleport.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, why doesn't he have... Anyway, I don't know. What else do we need to talk about here? Because there are just so many things that are annoying about this movie because I want to love it and I only like it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way of saying it. I really like the astral fight between Xavier and Apocalypse. Wow, okay.
Yeah.
I like it. He grows all huge and squishes them.
I like how it continues the tradition of the character playing Charles Xavier standing up in every single version that he's in. No matter what, Charles Xavier is standing up in his fucking movie.
Well, in your own head, would you cast yourself as paralyzed?
I'm saying, it's just a funny tradition. Yeah. It's like how, I don't know. There's just like sometimes with like long running franchises, there's like odd things like that. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. It just always amuses me that he must stand up in every single
Yeah.
portrayal of him.
I don't know.
I guess
I thought it was pretty visually cool seeing them fight that way, and I think it was, you know, Apocalypse, while it's underwhelming because they don't build it enough, it is pretty cool that he's basically holding off all of them in the real world at once while having a mental fight with the world's most powerful telepath when he doesn't even have telepathy properly. He's just that strong of will. It's a pretty effective way of saying, this dude can fuck them all up. Wait, here's the Phoenix. He's dead now.
Yeah, and I thought it really, like, I think the scene where Jean shows up is awesome. Like, I think just visually how, like, it's all faded, or not faded, but, like, all blurry, and then she walks in the door, like, it's just really, really awesome.
Yeah. I also like the idea that, like, she's having these visions that they assume are Apocalypse conquering the world, but I think it's pretty clear it's actually her. Like, it's Phoenix that has done all this. And when Apocalypse glimpses Phoenix, he says, all is revealed.
It's revealed, all will be revealed, my child, and all is revealed.
Yeah.
I think the issue with that, though, is that, like, Apocalypse is not some, like, true believer that believes in the destruction of the world. Like, he, you know, like, he's just, like, an egomaniac. Like, he thinks he's literally God.
Yeah.
And I think when God dies, like, that's a really, like, it should be, like, this really terrifying, like, humbling thing. Not, oh, I'm actually going to be able to make the world end. Yeah. Never mind, I don't care.
Yeah. Oh, peace, I'm out. Mic drop.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I've accidentally caused the world to die anyway by, you know, forcing the Phoenix to come to life. I don't... Like, it's a cute, poetic moment, but I don't really know if that rings true.
He took the best of us, and he tore him down.
Yeah. But I do like how... You know, I think one thing the movies are doing well is that I do think the decade time jump between each of them creates... If there was a bunch of smaller movies in between, it wouldn't bother me. But I do think they're at least doing a good job of, like, making some significant event at the end of them really change the course of history. Unlike, okay, so you saved the world with Days of Future Past, but guess what? You caused a bunch of people to unearth Apocalypse. And, you managed to kill Apocalypse, but the only way you could do that was by unleashing the Phoenix. And now the next movie is going to be about the Phoenix, and, you know, hopefully it's not terrible.
I hope it's not. I hope it's just teased more.
Yeah. Oh no, they're totally done. They're totally going all in on that.
I know.
They don't have the patience.
I know they don't, but I don't know if they did enough to. I mean, maybe this is on purpose, but, like, explain their current take on Phoenix. Like, in the original trilogy, well, I guess in the original trilogy, mostly in Last Stand, it's shown as, like, a different aspect of her personality. Traditionally, it's a space entity that chooses her. You can do what you want, but I feel they didn't quite do enough to... Like, they kind of just assume you know who Jean Grey is, you know?
Yeah. I think the idea is that it's inside of her, like, this power's inside... Like, I think this version is the power's just inside of her, and the extreme circumstances with Apocalypse forced it out early.
Yeah.
And now there's going to be huge repercussions for that are apparently going to wait a decade.
Yeah. No, I mean that's fine, but I mean I think they could have done more with it earlier. Like her nightmare sequence, I think they could have made it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think, like, you know, the notion that, like, Trials says to Cyclops, like, the only way to really master your power is to understand the full extent of it. And I feel like, you know, we can infer that he had that speech with Jean, but, you know, it probably... We could have used that speech with Jean, or maybe she should have been in the room or something like that.
Yeah.
So it could have hit home more that, you know, Jean doesn't... Did they even say Jean's afraid to embrace her power in this movie? Like, she's afraid of her powers, but, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, you know, 2-minute scenes makes that moment more powerful than it is.
I like... you mentioned Xavier training Cyclops. I really like that scene where they're excitedly walking through the grounds and unleashing the power. And I like the moment where, I mean, it's a little bit hammy when Cyclops is like, "Oh, it's okay, I can control it now," and then Jean's like, "They're not scared of you, they're scared of me." Like, I don't know, I kind of like that.
It's good. Like, I think it makes me long for a proper, like I said, like they're telling all these stories in the same movie, and it feels like none of them get enough time.
Yeah.
And we just don't get enough time with those people growing and finding their powers.
Yeah, I feel they tripped over their own feet a bit here. Like, they had plenty on the table. They had plenty of stuff that made it into the movie that was good, but it's not as good as it could have been. And, like, we set out to say, hey, this is a good movie, how dare you all slate it, but then we spent most of our time trashing on it. But I think there's so much good stuff in here. Well, not so much, but there's a lot of good stuff in here, and it's fun, and it's pretty easy to watch, and I think its biggest sin is that it's not phenomenal. And, that is, we've said it before, and I guess we'll keep saying it, they are being punished for it quite unfairly, where if you're not Marvel, you cannot put a foot wrong, kind of thing, otherwise you will be torn down and paraded through the streets. And this movie got such a bad rap. Like, I don't even know if people were saying it was bad. It's just there was a kind of indifference to it and bad review scores and stuff. And it's fine. It's good, I think.
Yeah, it's a fun, easy movie to watch, and it just shouldn't be. It was just so easily dismissed, and I think that's a shame.
Do you like this? I think I know the answer to this. You like this more than Deadpool, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. I don't know how I feel, but I might lean slightly towards Deadpool. But, like, I don't think there's a lot in it. Like, I wouldn't say that Deadpool is, like, way better than it. I think I slightly prefer it. But, like, for Deadpool to get this amazing reaction and this to be met with just tepidness. Like, I get that Deadpool is a refreshing character. Like, oh, look, he's so funny and different. But still, as a movie, it's not that much better than this.
No. And, I mean, as a movie especially, there's really no I don't think there's any comparison.
No.
But
you said this doesn't really have a legacy. I think its legacy is going to be, potentially, it's going to feed into the overall superhero narrative. And like, it doesn't. It shouldn't.
It already is.
Yeah.
It's already being used for that. It's already being used for the summer's been a huge disappointment narrative. It's already being used it's just like a part of all these narratives that are going on right now, and it's it's unfortunate. I don't think it's deserved, but I think it is a result though of not making a very good movie. And if I thought this was about a rising of standards across the board, then I probably wouldn't be so annoyed about it. It feels like it's being scapegoated more though for it than anything. And I think that's just annoying as a fan, but I shouldn't let my emotions get the better of me too much.
No. Its legacy is that like this is the movie where people don't care as strongly about X-Men as they do about Marvel.
Yeah.
And they can't coast. Like, you need to. I understand that movie making is numbers and it's a machine and all this, but I think they really need to finely tune these things from going forward. I think they need to be a little bit more different with the filmmakers they get in. Like, Bryan Singer does a great job all throughout, but I think they need someone else. I think they need a Matthew Vaughn style take.
Yeah.
In order to get respect now. I don't think they're going to be able to do it by just putting out a good movie anymore.
Yeah. And I don't want to shortchange what Bryan Singer has done before this movie, but this is by far his weakest. By far his weakest directorial effort with X-Men. And
it felt very much like a sort of, not really a cash-in, but just sort of like, by the numbers, like, we have to do this now. Like, oh, it's apocalypse time, everyone.
Yeah, it felt like it's almost like, when Peter Jackson was set out to make Lord of the Rings, part of it was what movie can't be made and like the idea was like Lord of the Rings can't be made. It's like, I think we can make that movie. Kind of like that was like part of that. Like, I think Days of Future Past is kind of one of those stories where you feel like we can't make this movie. That's impossible to do it correctly. It's like, oh, well, we kind of did.
Yeah.
What else can't we do?
I think they need to do some of the more weird and wonderful stuff in the X-Men universe. I think Proteus, I think X-Force, I think, some of these more offbeat things. I don't think they can chase Marvel down the rabbit hole of like, here's the big world-ending villain. Like, that's not what X-Men's about. Like, Apocalypse is a very famous villain, and there's a lot of great comic book stories involving, mutants that are going to take over the world. But I think the thing people love about X-Men is the smaller stories, is the diversity of the cast, like people from all over the world.
Well, not actual casting, but
of the characters, the diversity of the characters.
Yeah,
representation of different ethnicities and sexualities and proclivities and religion and all that. And I don't know how much of that you can do, but I think they should try it. And I don't think they should let Marvel dictate terms to them. I think they should just make the films that they think are the best films.
And I think they kind of wasted the second biggest villain in the franchise and kind of reduced him to, what was the Guardians villain?
Ronan.
Like, hey, let's take this brown person, make him blue, make him ridiculously religious, and turn him into a terrorist. And, like, that sucks.
Yeah.
That's shitty.
Yeah.
We could be better than that.
We can.
That we should.
So did you want to talk about that closing scene, or
the after credit scene?
Yeah.
No,
because I actually feel that will be more relevant in our next episode.
Yeah,
where we will.
Well, I think. I guess what I'll say is that I think just before we get to that, we'll just transition in general to the idea that I think if they're making the big franchise X-Men movies like every 5 years going forward and then filling in the gaps with like kookier, weirder stories, like that's probably a better balance than what seems to be the case right now.
Yeah, 100%. I like the final shot being, these 5 kids. Like, I think they've got a good set of 5 in terms of the powers, the actors, the looks.
They just need to kill off Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, and I think they will. I think she'll be gone. Like, maybe they'll convince her to do a cameo somewhere, or maybe they'll recast her eventually. But I think that 5, just looking at it on the screen, you're like, yeah, I'd watch a film with those 5 doing stuff. And I think that post-credit scene, like, it's too obscure to put at the very... Because it's not mid-credit, it's like right at the end, right?
I think it's the end. I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, but
that much.
I think there should have been something a little bit juicier, maybe funnier or something midway through, or something. Yeah. It's just... Because when I left the theatre, I think I was like the only one who... Just from overhearing people talk, I think I was the only one who got it.
It was very, very obscure. Yeah. I was expecting something that at least made sense. Like, at least Apocalypse I got.
Yeah.
Like, it's a
or even
guy.
If you don't, here's a big dude who's, like, moving pyramids. Like,
yeah.
Whoa, that's weird. And it's like, this is people picking up Wolverine's DNA and putting it in a briefcase. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, as I said, we will talk about that more next time, because we are out of X-Men movies to review. So our next episode, the final proper episode, as it were, we are going to be getting into what we want to see from this franchise going forward, which we discussed a little bit already. We're going to look at sort of failed projects and rumours that never came to pass, or maybe being worked on currently. We're talking Gambit, Wolverine 3, X-Force, whatever. And just a sort of general retrospective and where we're going to go forward from there, right?
And in the meantime, we're going to close you out with me live reactions to the Apocalypse post-credit scene from Days of Future Past. It's going to be very exciking, because I haven't seen this in like 3 years.
Okay, everyone, like, subscribe, comment, rate, review. Mike's watching now. But here we go to Mike's live reaction.
All right. There's a godlike creature. Wait, no, we got sand. I hate sand. It's so coarse and gets into everything.
Hmm.
Hashtag Anakin Skywalker. Hashtag not my Darth Vader. Okay. We have a god. A lot of people are bowing down to him. Some sort of eclipse. Oh, he's building a pyramid. He's building a pyramid out of sand.
And?
With his powers.
With?
His powers.
Next to?
Ah, the horseman.
There you go.
And he's blue and doesn't look... And he actually kind of looks like Sophie Turner a little bit. Okay, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.